But wow, so moving to like it's not a town with pep, it's a town with ghosts.
We come
Nancy,
in peace, Horseshoe Bay.
yes,
We come in peace.
we come in peace. It's just to like launch into our highlights real quick. We're gonna give you all the cliff notes, starting with the father drama because everybody's father was acting up
Yeah.
in those episodes.
Lots going on. What happened
What was
last week
happening?
again?
Yeah, what was happening with dads?
Okay, so
There were daddy issues, but it wasn't with Nancy.
it was not with Nancy. Her dad's
Oh, it was
behaving.
Ace's dad was
Yes.
And
was
Amanda's
being a
dad.
fool.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
foolish.
right.
The foolish
Yeah.
men were being foolish.
And we love Ace's dad, but he was
I know.
very like Ace. Well, he got kicked out of his house because his father, didn't like that he told his mom about his brother, and I'm just like, well, sir, you weren't going to be able to sit on it. I know she has a heart condition, but eventually it was going to come out. And it just was not fair that Ace he was already stressing over being caught up in catching a case over Amanda's dad, and then here comes his father also giving him some grief, and he didn't deserve what he got.
I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed.
Yes.
Yeah.
I am mad though at Amanda and.
Okay, maybe not a soapbox, maybe a stool. Just like a tiny little stool that you can stand on.
We'll just like nudge it.
Waiting on the thunder and lightning didn't knock out my internet.
No. Moral of the story, I think, is that we will be on the front lines for Ace.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Long story short, Amanda was wrong. Ace was right. Let's move on.
But it does set up an interesting plot that does happen in 7 and 8. At least like it's a minor thing for Ace's character. There's a lot of Ace growth in episodes 5 through 6. And I like the arc of him being like, I'm not living with my parents. I kind of feel like a burden. Like I want to like stand on my own as a young man, and like circumstances are making that difficult. I think this is the first time he's actually had to confront that. And it's a very young adult situation, or I guess maybe not young adult. I think it's something that happens with adults. In his case, he's just younger. He's like 19, so he didn't go to. Are we 19 still? Are we teenagers?
I feel like Ace and Nick are a little bit older than the girls.
Okay, so maybe 20.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, and I feel like they're in their 20s because he calls himself a grown man, which I know technically 18, 19 is you're grown, I guess, according to age. But yeah, the storyline in 7 and 8, I guess mostly in 8, I like that they paired Ace with Ryan because they are kind of in a similar boat where they're like their life kind of got shaken up at the same time. They're in similar circumstances where they're couch surfing, they're unsettled, they don't really have steady work, and while Ryan's not really insecure about that because this is like new and novel to him to be like free of his family commitments for the first time in his life, Ace is insecure about it. He's like, I feel like I'm not living correctly. Something doesn't feel right. And I have no conclusions about this. I'm just pointing out that I enjoyed seeing the differences in their perspectives on their similar circumstances.
Mm-hmm. I feel like these two episodes we just watched very much played into the previous two because S went through a lot in those episodes. And you're right, he kind of connected with Ryan because both of their lives had been upended at the same time.
He was kind of punchy to Ryan too. I was like, Ace, I love you, but you gotta chill. Just because Ryan isn't insecure about it doesn't mean you need to force him to be insecure about it.
Yeah, he definitely felt like he was kind of. There's always a little bit of S that's always like, yeah, I'll go along with this. Whereas he kind of felt a little bit fed up in these last two episodes, and I think that Alex did a good job of portraying that because you kind of feel like S he's a sweet soul, he's a light soul, and sometimes a lot of the heavy stuff doesn't touch him. But you can see that he kind of feels like he's been through an emotional war over the last couple of weeks, and it's starting to weigh on him. And I think that even though he stood up for himself to his dad in the last episode and was like, no, he's happy to be his own man and everything. But like, even when Nick disappeared, they played it as a joke at the start. I can move out, don't worry. But you guys said that was actually a realistic thing that was weighing on him. He felt like a burden to Nick. And I feel like sometimes he hits you in the face with these kind of emotional storylines you didn't expect to come from him. And by the end of it, you're like, oh, sweet S. And I feel like this was just another one of those episodes.
He doesn't give himself grace
Mm.
because like they also tell you how long it's been. It's been 30 days. Like he
Yeah.
just finished the Kugel. Like it has not been that long. And like what is that for that? If they get weekly paychecks, that's 4 of his paychecks, maybe 2 if they're bi-weekly. Like, no, you don't have enough money for rent. Why would you assume you would have enough money for rent in a month? But he extends that grace to Ryan when like he realizes he's being prickly and he says, well, your circumstances were different because you lost all your money and that you had the issue with your family. It's like your circumstances also make sense for where you are. Like you were kicked out. You were not prepared to move out. Like you almost, ended up a part of a legal case that was not the fault of your own. Like, so like chill,
I
breathe,
know.
deep breath.
I love this character arc for him because it is so relatable. Like in your early 20s, you feel like you need to be settled,
Mm-hmm.
but that's just unrealistic for everybody. Like you're gonna see on Instagram somebody graduated from college, got a great job, bought a house, they got engaged, they have a dog, and you're gonna be like, I'm nowhere near that. And you feel like what you just feel down on yourself. And I think within his own friend group, he's like, I'm sleeping on my friend's couch. He just bought a building. He opened a youth center. He's engaged. And here I am in the historical center beefing with a ghost. Like he's like, what am I doing? And I can't fault him for that because that's something you have to go through. You have to get to the other side and realize I wasted my time feeling that way. I put too much pressure on myself. Um, and I do kind of like that the 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 heat's gonna start getting turned up because Ryan was saying he's stressed about Nancy, and that's one thing that they both are not addressing. It's the elephant in the room. It's a bubble floating around them, and they're not popping it. It's like they just won't see it. And I think for the first time, Ace was confronted with it from her dad, which was crazy. Um, but yeah, I think we got way too ahead of ourselves with this Ace storyline. He's just so fun. I love him.
He is. I do just to stay on Nace Watch for a moment though. I don't understand what the tension would be between him and Nancy for this specific situation. Because I was like, is it you feel like because she's not gonna look down on you. So I wonder if he just feels like he wants to be like, do you want to be established before you and Nancy go anywhere? Is that what this is? Like, do you want to have your own
Maybe
place?
because like if we look back at the men she's dated Nick, who has money, has a business, he owns things. She dated who's that rich guy that died?
Owen, also money, business.
I don't think he's seen the sparks between her and Agent Park. Did he her and Tamora had that thing? Bobsy, I don't know if he would be insecure about Gil, but he even if it's real or not, it's real to him that maybe he feels a little bit insecure compared to the guys that she's dated in the past. But who knows if it's that deep, if he's thought that far about it, but maybe he will be now. I don't know. That's
But
just a hypothesis.
I think it's with him going through everything at the moment and kind of feeling like he's a burden on people. He was afraid to be a burden on Nancy when maybe he is going through these things and feels this way about her. You know, the way like when you're having that, like when you're lost in life and you want to be your own person, but at the same time, you know, the safety net of calling your parents to sort it out is there. I feel like since he's kind of going through that, he didn't want Nancy to be the safety net, which again, I do have slight issues with because Nancy is their safety net when it comes to all things ghost. She would have had the answers to that situation. But at the end of the day, they explained it away very well because S was the one who was able to read into her voice and know that she was going through something of her own in a way, highlighting that he knows her better in a way that other people don't. But it was, on the other hand, it was also really interesting that Ryan, who people kind of play like a bit more of like an adult S and that he's kind of funny and sometimes doesn't see things, he was the one that picked up on that there's something there between him and Nancy and confronted S with it, and S didn't know what to do with that. So the S and Ryan partnership kind of, it flourished in these 2 episodes. You really got to see that. I mean, it all started with the first one when Ryan and Carson basically became kids, and Nancy and S had to be the parents of the whole situation.
Were they not having the time of their lives?
No.
So, like I was getting, oh my God, seeing Scott Wolf. Is that his name?
Yeah.
Yeah, because okay, I'm sorry, I just got so confused in my head because in Party of Five, the actor that played his older brother was Matthew Fox, and both of them have
Mm.
animal last names, and I
Oh,
always get them like
yeah.
mixed up in my head. But seeing him in the varsity jacket, I was like, that's like sweet Bailey Salinger from Party of Five. It was like such a throwback. I loved it. And just, oh my God, they also putting the dads together has been such a joy in this season because
Mhm.
to see them act together in a different way, the way they played off each other in the teens, where you see the generation divide a little bit, where like, um, you can see how they're like a little bit older than each other. Like, Ryan regressed right back to like the 90s
Mhm.
teen in his colorful whatever that was. He wanted to ride dirt bikes. He was like such a bro. And it was so funny.
And Carson was like, I guess 80s, late 80s. They
Hmm.
were just, they were adorable. And they were best friends, which is like, I mean, we knew that it's been their dynamic, even as much as Carson is aggravated by Ryan's inability to run a household. They really are a team. And so to see that, and as teenagers, Ryan would be the one who'd be able to get them out of bad situations because apparently teenage Carson does not like public speaking. And Ryan had to
Hmm.
just be pompous and walk in and be like, so you can't do the thing because my family has stuff and we're the
I love
Hudsons.
how he like pulled that out of thin air of like somehow fake teen Ryan was like, I know how to stop illegal proceedings.
That man is efficient. But
It
I
was
also
probably something he saw his dad do or something. I don't know.
Mm.
Mhm.
But I also love the generation, like Reed said, the generation divide, because like Nancy and Ace, they are not all much older than teenagers, and yet they could not get along with these teenagers because they had nothing in common. Like for example, when Nancy asked, "Are you mocking me?" to Ryan, Kennedy's face. Oh, what a performance! And then Ace stepped up and was like, "I speak the language." What a moment.
Oh my God. Okay. Can we? It's time for Kennedy to get praised because these two episodes, we had two different shades of her
Hmm.
just
Mhm.
Oscar worthy acting. In Seven, her scenes with Madison talking about Odette, which we need to talk about because
Yeah.
we'll get to that. Um, sh just the way that she just, I don't know. I'm running out of words to describe how much I enjoy watching Kennedy act. And then in episode 8, there are like shades of the more like playful, silly Nancy. Like there are memes that I had saved before I even started watching Nancy Drew because just the faces that Kennedy made, I was like, I didn't know Nancy Drew was kind of a silly time. And in these two episodes, two of the memes I have saved in my meme folder happen. And I was
Nice.
like, oh my God, finally I get context. And it was even funnier in the moment to see. I think one of them was when her dads are in the back seat
Hmm.
acting up
Yeah.
and she turns around and she points at them. And I loved it. Yeah, Kennedy, I don't know how she balances the the heavy side of Nancy, the more like vulnerable side with the yeah, I'm still a 19-year-old girl that's kind of silly, even though all this is happening around me. I I love that girl. She just kills it every week.
Hmm.
Mhm. It is an excellent example of like what you love to see in an actor.
Hmm.
Because she can
Hmm.
handle basically everything. Her "I will turn this car around" energy was so strong with her dad's, and it gave a chance to like come off of like the episode before that was pretty heavy, and it's not that like Seven isn't, but we start like with levity. And yes, it's very important that we get this soul splitter. And yes, it's very important that we save George, but we also have time to let the dads run amok and for Nancy and Ace to have to wrangle them. And then you get to the George part, which love the scene, didn't love how he arrived there. The acting in the scene was great. I just think to me, I don't think the show did enough work between Bess and Odette to warrant Bess basically leaving George in limbo because she doesn't want to destroy Odette.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think I'm on record saying that the best No Dead stuff, I didn't really ever connect with it.
Mhm.
But it's still like I don't really mind. I'm okay with leaving it. It's technically like a C B plot. Like it's fine, whatever. But yeah, it didn't have the weight for me. Like I didn't fully I wasn't there with Bess being
Mhm.
heartbroken
Hmm.
over having to destroy the crystal because in my mind I'm like, just destroy it. Like, whatever. Like, I don't know. Just like Nancy said, she's a spirit. She's been gone for a long time. Just give her peace. So I wasn't really fully there with her at the bus state. She was leaving. She was at the bus stop, right? I don't know, whatever that bench
Yeah.
was. She was ready to get out of there with her crystal. I don't know what her game plan was. But yeah, I was not completely there with her. Beautiful performances. And I don't
Yes.
mean that in the way of like beautiful gowns, like legitimately, like that's some of Madison's best work in the show.
Mhm.
Without a doubt. And I agree. I agree with what you both said. I'm not really sure I liked how we got there. As a standalone episode, it was fine if you didn't need the context, but the context we do have, and I feel like we could have had a little bit more if they really wanted Bess and Odette to be this great relationship that this episode suggested that it was. Nevertheless, the performances did the work for the writing, because the Nancy and Bess, if you look back to season 1, they were the kind of the two that connected in the like group of people first, and we haven't really get to see them paired up that much, and they weren't even paired up that much in this episode. But when that just came in, you felt all those emotions. You felt like they knew each other for a long time. You saw Nancy was soft with Bess before she was soft with anyone else, and now you get to see her be such an endearing performance from Kennedy, such a reassuring performance, and just seeing Madison, that beautiful performance where she just like broke down. It did all the work it needed to, which is why as an episode I'm perfectly fine with how it played out. I just wish we had a bit more context leading up to it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because there's a line in the premiere of season 3 where Bess calls Odette her soulmate. And it's, ooh, that line's doing a lot of heavy lifting that the previous season did not do. And I can't hinge that on one line. And this episode kind of does that. But it's a gorgeous scene. I think, like, for me, the way that I had to enter it was that it's still a life that she'd have to let go of. And I was like, for that part of it, I get it would be heart-wrenching.
Meanwhile, I'm cold-hearted, like, crush that crystal. I don't care. I think I was just over Odette. Love her to death. But love her to death, literally. I was just ready for that storyline to be over.
So was Nancy, because Nancy was like, you know what? I'm sorry. I told you to destroy it, and I didn't think about your perspective of it. I was like, no, Nancy, you had the right energy. We just have to stop down for
me
Bess.
and Nancy were like, what's going on with Beth?
But I mean, I think the way that the episode does slow down to pick up trauma is interesting too, because it wasn't just the Bess's trauma over like having let go of Odette and what would that mean and how she had been holding on to a piece of hope that they'd be able to put her in another body. I guess that was a reveal I wasn't prepared for. But we also went back to Nick's trauma, which the show doesn't always like excavate. And when he had that conversation with Addie, and I realized in that moment, I had never really thought about what it would have been like for him to come to Horseshoe Bay to thank Nancy's mom, only for her to find out that she'd passed. And then for the woman who had accused him, who he then had developed a relationship with, for her to get murdered while he's there too. And I was like, oh, you're right. Nancy was dealing with the loss of her mom, and that's very heavy, but Nick had 2 back-to-back significant deaths that were not explored that much. And it is traumatic. And then when he listed out everything, and I was like, realized he'd never had an opportunity to process what he went through. Everything has been, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing this. So him disappearing on everybody kind of made sense, even though it wasn't something that you would expect Nick to do.
Yeah, he's never really had the chance to come up for air. He's just always powered through, and that's just his energy, right? How we know him is like he's always the one that's like, okay, what's next? And that's not always healthy. I will say the disappearance threw me because it felt so like dire at the end of episode 7, and then episode 8 started. Once again, they bamboozled me because I'm like, did I skip an episode? I always expect them to pick up with where the previous episode left off, and they don't often do that. And I was expecting maybe like when episode 8 started, like 24 hours earlier, and they always just bamboozle me, and I love it. Like I love being kept on my toes. But it didn't feel as dire when he was missing and they were searching for him. Like George was stressed, obviously. And I feel like she didn't also have the chance to really deal with being back in her body by herself and having getting to deal with that before she's like, oh my God, my fiance is missing. I was also on high alert for like a impending storyline. If they did find him, she didn't know that Odette was released into the world, to the ether or whatever. So like there wouldn't have been a storyline where like, oh, now you're gonna live forever. Maybe I don't want to get married. Like I was on high alert for that storyline to come. But it did kind of take me out when they, not to cut to the chase, when they found him and he was just on a football field. And I was like, you've been there for 2 days.
That part was funny. It's
just like so sweet. It's like, of course, Nick, like he's not going far. He just needed to clear his head. And I was like, that's so sweet and innocent and exactly what he should have done anyway. Because it was out of character if he just like left town. That's not within his character. But I was kind of like, I had an issue with him not really telling anybody, just like leaving. And I know his friend from Florida explained that he does that, but I was like, I don't know. I struggled with it. What do you guys think?
I thought the timing of it was off, because I'm glad we're finally getting some Nick exploration. Because, like Sabrina said, everything that's kind of happened in his life since, or throughout the show's run, has been a reaction instead of like an action. And now he's starting to realize that, and was like, well, what would his life have been like if none of this had happened? So I get, and that I appreciate. But we have been playing with George's death for 3 seasons now. I hate that the payoff was sacrificed for another storyline. And I hope it's an important one, and I hope it goes somewhere. I just think that this was season, maybe series finale. I'm pretty sure I said a couple of weeks ago, this could have played, this George story potentially dying could have played out right until the final season. And then it would have been like George kicking over that blood bucket in season 1 actually was an arc that played throughout the whole show's run. But they didn't want to do that, and that's okay. But we had a beautiful episode to deal with it in the middle of the season that felt like it came out of nowhere, and the storyline was quickly dropped so we could move on to something else. I'm a big fan of Aftermath. Nancy Drew does Aftermath so well, and it never got a chance to do this because we went right back into a different episode or a different storyline. We might get it, and so I don't want to write it off instantly, but because Nick spent so much time off screen and none of the other characters outside of George were paying attention to him, it didn't feel like it was a story that needed to kick the Odette thing out of the way right away. I feel like we could have moved a little bit more slowly and had both stories had the meaningful explanations they needed to.
I think, did I like it? No, I did not. Like I like the where they wanted to go with it. I think my issue with it is the execution. By the end of the episode, I did accept what the choice that they had made, because it gives Nick an opportunity to act outside of his character, because it's something that you wouldn't expect him to do. So that I appreciated. It just right, but it's starting right after the whole Odette thing was jarring. But I think it's also, he has just been kept so far out of the loop when it comes to what George is doing, that him leaving his phone maybe is just a reaction of like, when I call, you never pick up. I always end up finding out later what you're doing. I think you can find out later what I'm doing. I'm just gonna leave it here. It might have been a reaction to that, with the story not giving dialogue for that. It's only an assumption. Perhaps in the next episode he'll clarify if he has time, because his friend told him that she thinks she killed somebody. So we might not even slow down long enough to be able to get Nick's thoughts on why he, just left abruptly.
I'm concerned about Nick and George because episode after episode, they're keeping things from each other. They haven't seen each other. It's like, you can't start a marriage in this. You're so divided. You're so far away from each other that I'm concerned that they'll want to snap right back in to each other, but it's not going to work, because you're right. Now he has to deal with his friends back, and she was already insecure about that, and she understood why she was back, and she let her have that moment, which I think George should have went with Eve on the football field. That was kind of an interesting choice for me, because now George doesn't know this, and who knows if she's immediately going to learn this information. And now we're keeping like the Odette thing. There's something else that happened that I don't think that Nick and George had a conversation about. They haven't even connected over the whole soul splitter thing, right? Like she kept him completely, like, I don't know, there's just so much. It's not like it's world-shattering secrets, but it's enough withholding that it's like, how are you guys gonna build a life on this right now? So I'm concerned they're gonna there's gonna be a red light on the wedding night.
I think so. Also, question with Nick: did we change Nick's story in the middle of the series? Because I thought he went to jail, not juvie, but his friend says
Hmm.
juvie. And then
Yeah,
like he's a sophomore. I thought we were senior.
I have no idea, honestly. I really didn't know any of the details about what happened with Nick. I'd forgotten everything. Wait, okay, here's my question. Did his self-defense situation, did that happen in Maine or Florida?
Florida. I mean,
Okay.
no, Maine, because that's why they were there. They were there did she say 3 years ago? For
I
Yeah.
think
and
so, yeah.
that's
And
how
in my mind, I'm like, oh, so at the start of the series, and like, no, it's only been like 2 months. Right? In this show, it hasn't been that
Yeah,
long.
time does
In
mm,
move
season
differently,
one.
Nancy.
yeah, maybe 3 months. I know we're not in summer. You know what? It was December is when the dates that Ace was putting in, and we start
Yeah,
this
yeah, yeah,
season
yeah.
in the summer. So it's been a few months.
Mm.
Okay. Interesting. I don't know.
Timeline is lost for me now. Because I could
Yeah.
have sworn he was an older teen, not a 15 to 16-year-old.
When that happened, you mean?
Yeah. And now
Yeah,
when
I
she
thought
said
so
juvie,
too. Maybe he was right on the cusp. Because I remember Nancy's dad saying a lot about, or Carson saying a lot about that in season one. I don't remember. Someone tell us in the comments,
I know,
please.
help us, remind us.
we we've watched so much of the show at one time that it's like hard to keep all the
Yeah,
threads
it's
close
all blurred
together. Like
together.
we did so well in like the first season of like bringing everything, all the information with us, that like now that we're 3 seasons in, like there's so much information.
I
Yeah.
know.
And we got even more with Temperance, and now she's in a different body, and there was a whole, honestly, a season-long arc happened in one act, and I was
Yeah.
like, love the pacing. I need to catch up. Hold on.
I think I had a singular problem with that whole temperance thing, and I think it was just that I knew it was her from the beginning that was
Hmm.
and they tried to
Yeah, yeah,
play it
yeah.
like they had snowed us. It's like you really didn't though. You're giving what the Flash gave with their whodunit. Like it was very obvious. This Temperance isn't throwing herself in front of anybody. Her being like move so she can get like hit in the arm. I was like, and they tried to pull it back by having Nancy
Yeah.
sympathize with her, and I was like,
Yeah.
I get it, but no.
Yeah, I
Mm.
will say I think the misdirects were ever so slightly successful, because they had me questioning like, maybe Temperance is, I don't know, maybe she's good, but she still had that like, you're right, there was something about her where we're like, we're not trusting her, right?
Hmm.
And
Mhm.
when the reveal came, I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. I wasn't completely like, oh my, it wasn't like the Night Agent where I was like shook, even though like I saw it coming. um yeah, I wasn't completely like shaken. I was shaken about everything else that happened, but I was
Mhm.
like, girl, I knew it was you the whole time. All the shady stuff started happening the second you dropped the walls on Horseshoe Bay. Like, I'm not brand new.
Yeah. No, I was kind of wondering if we'd seen it already as well, because she's quite confrontational, and throughout the whole thing she wasn't confrontational. After she got injured, she wasn't like, why did you do this to me, that was a stupid idea, or anything like that. She couldn't have been like, well, okay, she was putting up a few walls so that they couldn't see her most painful memory, but she didn't like push back against them physically, didn't shout at them or roar at them, which I feel like is what Temperance would have done if they ruined her plan and almost killed her immortality. But none of that happened. But then at the end, they did kind of get me, because she revealed to Nancy about how she took the wall down and everything. And I was like, oh, okay, we're being upfront here. Maybe Temperance is being upfront completely and nice and honest. But then at the end, she wasn't. I knew when she came out looking like her daughter and was like, oh, there was a chance this could have happened. I was like, you would have known that. So I kind of seen where they were going there. But between the episode, the stakes and everything, and the fact the light monster looked like something out of the 1950s, it was like a solid, like horror, terrifying episode
Yeah,
that taught us more about Temperance.
it was given
Mhm.
Charmed,
It
OG Charmed,
Yeah,
was.
in
It
like a
yes,
very
was.
like, and I mean that in a really positive way. But all I know is that Nancy got and she's gonna be pissed.
Yes, she is.
mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
When she's gonna be like, I sympathize with you, and I was like, well, maybe you shouldn't have though, because the scene that they show that the most heartbreaking moment, is when she isn't when her daughter dies, it's when her daughter betrays her, and she says, "I hope you die." at Gettysburg. And I was like, and then she does. I was like, Nancy, I think that would have been the point, that we wouldn't have quite been on Temperance's side.
Red flag should have been going off.
Yeah. But that whole like complicated story about the Dows and Temperance, I really enjoyed. I also enjoyed the inserts of the memories and how they did it. It looked like film grade, right? Like it's just an overlay. I appreciated the special effects there. I also appreciated that we got a little tiny moment to do some character exploration for Park. It took me out of left field though. I will say I was briefly taken out of the episode when he explained who Eleanor Harris was, and I was like, oh, didn't know we were going to have a moment about a school shooting, but okay. And but it was very well acted. It was an excellent scene.
To get on my Kennedy praise again, she had to say the phrase commendable zeal. And in any other script, that would have been such a clunky line. But my God, you know that Kennedy worked that line to make it work. Because when she said it, it felt so natural for Nancy. And I was like, who is saying commendable zeal in a show and it's not like cringy? I was like, I literally had to stop and be like, God damn, Kennedy McMann. Like just those two words like gave me chills, and I masterclass every time. I hope Kennedy sees this, like, because I don't know if anybody praised you on saying that line, but I am, because like not many actors can pull that off. Like that is such a hard thing to say naturally. Like, I don't know. Maybe I was just like doing too much, but that line really, I was like, my gosh, Kennedy, you did it again. And constantly raising the bar.
It's an emotional scene too. So to be able to say that and still carry the weight of what's happening, it's not a small feat. And this is the reason why every Nancy review, you're like, you know what, we're gonna dust off the stool and I'm gonna get up here and praise Kennedy. I mean, she deserves it.
It's amazing. Like just like the tenor in her voice when she said it. Oh my gosh. Every choice she makes as a performer, it feels like the first time I'm seeing somebody act. It's just so good. Again, I could be doing way too much, but she's just so good. And I'm going to miss her when she's not playing Nancy anymore.
I know, but you know what we're going to see her in? The Good Lawyer.
Yes.
Manifesting that.
Yeah, it's
positive
happening.
Vibes. Yeah.
We're not gonna, I still haven't watched it though. No one come for me. I'm sorry. I keep forgetting.
But one of the things that we talked about in the episodes that got lost was the Hannah bit, and I wonder if the Hannah and Temperance storylines is going to start to connect now. That I think that's Hannah talking to Ace and Ryan.
I thought that too.
Because the Drew crew were it was way too easy for them to be like, we shouldn't have believed Hannah. This shouldn't have ever happened. And I was like, you believe Temperance, but you don't believe Hannah? Hannah, who has helped you with everything? Why would Hannah suddenly turn on you? So now I think even beyond the grave, she's over here like, caution. Look at the tapes.
I hope she's not dead. I hope she's just like lost somewhere. Well, I guess if she's a ghost communicating, she has to be dead. Ugh.
Or Temperance put her on a different plane. So she's like in another reality. And but she has enough power to like help them.
Stress.
Yes. And Temperance is a mom who's doing too much. She wants, because that line, when she's writing her daughter the letter, and she says, we're going to be one in spirit and in body. And I was like, we couldn't let the little one go. We couldn't do that. Because in the stack of letters, I was like, it's creepy, Temperance. It's just really weird.
And it feels like, I don't know what the difference is, but all this, she's in Charity's body. Yeah. It just feels like a complete like turn. Like we broke bad. Like we're in her villain era. She did something bad and it feels so good. Like this is where we are now. The turn was incredible. I'm interested to see how far she takes it. Because they were shook when they saw her in Charity's body. I don't know if they were shook for the same reasons we were. I don't know what Nancy picked up on. She was a little off her game. Nancy, we need to sharpen those instincts. Maybe we need to So compare notes with Ace.
Nancy just needs a day off. She'll be back on her game after that.
Girl had a lot blood loss. She went through it this episode.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Those sneakers she had on.
Oh, I'll need to check those out because I think I missed the footwear. I'll have to go back.
I'm always checking out what she's got on her feet, and she went for comfort this week.
Ooh.
And I was like,
It's deserved.
You better, Nancy.
Any last thoughts about Nancy Tree before we end?
I love Kennedy McMann.
I don't think you can follow that up, so yeah, go for it.
Okay, well that's it.